what we do here is go back.
We have a few more people that we're waiting for, and then we'll start in a minute. So thank you all for being patient with us, and thank you so much for being engaged and listening. We know it's a lot to process and a lot of information being thrown at you in these next 2 hours. And I just want to acknowledge that and thank everyone for being here. And before we get started, I want to pass it to SK really quickly to continue talking about fundraising and our panelists and things like that before we hand it off to Julius. So SK, when you're ready.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, hope you had a nice break. I know I did. There's just something about soothing, about how you keep encouraging people to get water. It's like a reminder that we have bodies and need actually to nourish them. I just wanted to name sort of lifting up this panel that's about to speak, that is led and, you know, participated with its all Black panelists and Black moderator, just lifting up how much labor that is and how much leadership is on this call, how much amazing representation from Bay Area theater. And we are fundraising to get these panelists like paid more than the stipend that is available through TBA through them. You know, we asked them to participate in this panel, and they're putting themselves out there in a way that is more vulnerable than, you know, I certainly am putting myself out there. And like, you know, we need like reparations is like a huge part of the work. And yeah, so I'm actually going to be, I didn't have time to get the GoFundMe together, so I'm actually just putting my personal Venmo, and we'll be redistributing it equally amongst the panelists. I'm going to put this in the chat. I also just want to say, like, I know that theaters are struggling right now. I know people are really like worried about their jobs, and that might lead people to be really like, oh, I don't have another cent to give. And if that's legit where you are, that's okay. I'll also just name like this work of generosity is liberatory for all of us. You know, when we talk about intersectionality, like, you know, how it's so hard sometimes for queer people to acknowledge racism in queer community, or trans people to acknowledge racism, or, you know, working class people to acknowledge racism. It's often because it's like, I can't give, I'm struggling, how can this happen? But I just want to encourage people to really like interrupt that, and the giving that we do for each other, especially in a reparative way, especially honoring like the immensity of this labor that's taking place on this call, like that is gonna set us all free. We're all better for it. So yeah, putting the Venmo here, I'll do it a couple more times. Yes, it has a cost. It has an absolute cost. So yeah, I'm collecting that. I'll drop it a few times. That's all I wanted to say. Also happy, I'll put my email, happy to talk with anyone more beyond this call. Sure.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Now I'm just going to hand it off to Julius, who's going to be moderating. So thank you.
Hi, folks. Once again, my name is Julius. It's nice to see you. The first thing that I want to ask is just house cleaning logistics. All of the participants of the panel have their video turned on. However, if you would like to just focus on those people instead of everybody else, you can turn your video off. And also you can click like the 3 little buttons if you're on a laptop above at the upper right hand corner of anybody's little square and click hide non-video participants. And the more that people do that, the more that we'll be able to just focus on the panelists and focus on their time and their words and their stories moving forward. So before I start introducing everyone, of course they will probably introduce themselves. I just want to amplify and repeat some of the stuff that was repeated before. Specifically, what Smiley was saying is that there is a very large discussion in these spaces around allyship. And over the past few years, there's been a discussion and evolution of what it means to be an ally. Simultaneously, we're also seeing a discussion of what it means to be an accomplice. And we're seeing that there is a slight difference. So when Smiley and others say that being a part of this call is, or listening to either Black folks or other people about their experience and standing with them, that is part of allyship. You know, allies speak and work for others, they focus on inclusion, they focus on helping others. However, when we go into questioning if people are accomplices inside of decolonizing these structures and really dismantling them, that once again, that requires the active participation. It requires an active work. It's not necessarily just standing with others or even sitting on a call for a few hours. It is an active participation to work against what we're taught. And this discussion and this panel of these incredible artists is just one part of that overall process that requires learning, re-education, and stepping back for many people, especially those who have privilege in any sense of the word. So I wanted to say that first. And when we go into this panel, we are, if you have questions, we will please put them in the chat, but know that they will be answered after all of the panelists have been given their space and their time to explore some of these questions and topics that we are discussing. So thank you. So first of all, I would like to introduce some of our panelists, or all of our panelists, but instead of naming them for themselves, I would prefer that they speak on their own behalf. If we could start with Cheri. Would you mind starting for us?
Hi, everybody. My name is Cheri Miller. I am not happy to be here, willing to be here for the sake of our theater community. I am a theater lover first from the audience perspective, and I'm blessed to be a theater maker as well. I'm the house manager at Theater First. I am also an instigator with the Bay Area Women's Theater Festival, and a cohort within the Hive through Crowded Fire. That's it, she, her.
Perfect, thank you so much. Let's move on to Kathleen, would you mind?
Hi, I'm Cathleen Riddley. The first thing I'm going to say is that my internet is somewhat unstable, so if I end up turning off my video, it's because my internet runs better. And if worse comes to worse, then I will call in. I'm just letting you know. Anything could happen over here in the boondocks. So again, my name is Cathleen Riddley. I'm an actor in the Bay Area. Been living here and acting here for about 22 years or so. company member of Theater First, Shotgun Players, and Playground, and I'm glad to be here and pained to be here at the same time because of these discussions have to continue to happen. I'm glad that they are. It hurts that they need to, but I'm glad that they need to, and I'm glad to see that there are so many people out there on this call really trying to sort of interrogate their own biases and to center and amplify the voices of Black people. She, her.
Thank you so much. Can we move on to Omoze, please?
Hi, my name is Omoze Idehenre. I go by she, her. I am coming from the point of, I want to say, a Black woman. And I want to start that off. I'm coming from a place in which, or an experience in which Black women were not valued or taken care of properly in a theater space. So I am here to represent that. And I'm also coming from a grad school, let me say, core company standpoint. So I went to school at ACT, got my grad school degree, graduated in 2010, joined the core company that same year, and had a huge journey in those, I think it was 4 years I was with the core company. And also in those years, I formed really great relationships with other theaters in the Bay Area and across the country. But I also experienced a lot of microaggressions and macroaggressions. And I'm really happy to be here to represent from that perspective. So, yeah.
Thank you. Santoya?
Hi, everybody. My name is Santoya Fields. I've been doing work here in the Bay Area for about 3 years. I am honored to be here today. I am thankful for this opportunity because I have spoken up. I've worked at about 6 different theater companies here in the Bay Area. And I can say all but one, I have experienced either overt racism, systemic racism, anti-Blackness, and some of those theaters were triple threats in that sense. And so I've spoken up every step of the way. I have always been an advocate for actors speaking power. And so I'm truly honored to be here to speak up not only for myself, but for anyone else who has not done that for themselves yet. I think that's very important. And I like to advocate on behalf of Black women, especially because you know, I was seen as an angry Black woman for a very long time. And it wasn't until recently that I realized I have very good reason to be an angry Black woman. But it's about giving that anger purpose. And it's about continuing to call out the systems that you want to see change in. So that is why I'm here today.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, of course, Rodney.
Hey everyone, I'm Rodney Earl Jackson Jr., he, him. I am a man, I am a Black man, I am a gay Black man, and I do not own the voice of all those people, but I do own a perspective, my perspective. I am a theater owner, I'm a theater creator, I'm the co-founder and co-artistic director of the San Francisco Bay Area Theater Company, along with my co-founder, Marcelo Javier. I am excited to be here because I am excited for progress and for healing. And I think this is a beautiful, cryptic as it may be, but beautiful, you know, head that we're hitting. And it's about time. And I'm happy that we are here to provide the time for this important conversation.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all of our panelists. You know, I could probably wax philosophic for a little bit more, but let's just get down into it, okay? My first question is, out of these panelists, is this the first time that any of you have participated in an anti-Blackness panel, or how have the discussions of anti-Blackness, how have you experienced those discussions previously? please. And anybody who wants to start about that, please go ahead.
I'll start. Towards my final year at ACT, we had a huge, tumultuous panel discussion, quite like this, but face-to-face in person. And I realized in that time, like, I didn't have vocabulary. I didn't have words to articulate what had been going on with me and what was going on with other students who were Black, BIPOC. We all didn't quite have the words. But in that discussion, in that panel, we saw it all. We saw institutionalized racism at work. We saw white fragility. We saw one girl burst into tears, and the artistic director used that as an excuse to stop the meeting. It was done once this young white lady was crying, but we didn't have the vocabulary to talk about that. But we could point at it, but we couldn't say it. And I feel like it's really important for us to have vocabulary. And I noticed, and I've learned going through an institution from grad school, well, educational institution from undergrad to grad school, even to core company, like there's no book, there's no manual telling you how to deal with these spaces. It's just that all of this, and I'll say it, abuse is coming at you. And you're absorbing it, and people are thinking you are bitter or angry, and that's not the word, that's not the definition. And even to this day, I still don't quite have the definition of what it's like to absorb all of that. But I remember the artistic director in that discussion silencing me. I remember her dismissing our issues, the type of excuses that she used. And I'll probably discuss that later because I think it needs to be discussed. She had various excuses about why she was not anti-Black or racist. There was defense after defense after defense. And it was all of us saying, hey, this is what's going on. And her response was always a defense, constant defense. And I'm noticing that in the Bay Area, like all over, across the nation. So I'm coming also from that standpoint. So yeah.
Yes, please, Kathleen.
In terms of like there being engaging in a formal panel about anti-Blackness, I haven't been involved in that kind of thing because nobody's ever asked. And I think about, like, if we're gonna go back to it, nobody's white theater company has said, sisters, brothers, can you come in here and talk to us anything about our anti-Black policies? And nobody's asked. So these discussions tend to happen between us. Like now there's a coalition of Black women theater makers that few people on the calls are involved with, and some beautiful women, and we talk amongst ourselves to sort of power through these issues because nobody has invited us to the table to share these things. And so we've had to create our own space to do that. And the risk, and although it's a risk that, you know, now that this is open up, we should take the risk of going knock, 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 hello theater, when are you gonna let us talk to you about anti-Blackness? Is this, that's a huge step when you don't feel that the invitation is there in the first place. And so the fact that one of the things I am glad about, even though I'm glad and pained at the same time, I'm glad that somebody said, can we talk about anti-Blackness in the Bay Area theater? Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Stop it before you make me cry, but I will cry multiple times before the end of this. Did anyone have any other, yes, please, Rodney.
I don't want to make a joke because this is a serious topic, but I feel like I'm daily a panelist for the Black experience, especially in San Francisco. I was born and raised here. There's not a lot of us still here. I live like right next to the Fillmore, one of the last communities. But my joke is that like constantly asked now to be on panels and like, can you come and support this or can you speak on this thing? And I do it. There is a layer of appreciation, but there's also a layer of where you been. But I'm getting past that. We here now. We here now. I'm trying to move forward. Or I'm trying. What was that one video where that one beautiful Black woman says, "You're lucky that we're looking for equality and not revenge. We are looking for, we're looking for equality. So let's try to at least get there." But I want to say this: like, I created a theater company, which is literally the antithesis of this because we are all have diverse backgrounds. So we all kind of speak to those perspectives. Like my social media rep and graphic designer are Asian, and they're not the same kind of Asian. My production manager and co-founder are Latin, one is Guatemalan and one is half Panamanian, one half Chilean. And then our development director is Pakistani and Black, and I'm Black. So like we have a magnitude of we're a big old mosh pod of information. And when one of us has a thing we don't understand, there's a circle of people, a community, be like, or have you thought about that? It's diverse from the membrane, which I think prospers and promotes us to have not anti-Blackness. It's seeped into our culture, which I think is where a lot of other companies probably falter. Their leadership or who make up their teams don't have that culture defined in diversity, so that those diverse voices are already heard and seen. We have the discussions about racism and those things, but it's like a whole new level. Because we already come from a marginalized perspective. So having more marginalized people on your team, I think promotes not needing to have anti-Blackness things already.
Thank you so much. I think that especially with those 3 accounts, that's what we're kind of seeing when anybody, especially Black people, try to speak on issues of race and anti-Blackness. We're seeing, like Omoze said, just a lack of language, or we are not seeing even an invitation or an understanding that an invitation may need to be made in the first place. And then also we're seeing, alongside the lack of language, we're seeing behavior that is literally in our DNA. If Black people, if we understand the language of oppression in our DNA, then surely some white people have the language of the oppression in their DNA. And it reflects in our conversations.
Absolutely.
Moving forward, I do want to ask, and I'm sure that specific instances of everyone will come out, but I kind of want to focus it a little bit just more about questions, and our experiences and examples of our experiences will come out. But I just want to continue this by asking, how do you all self-advocate for yourself when you are faced in times of anti-Blackness or blatant racism? And even Omoze, what you were saying, I definitely want to hear more about that, but I want to open it up to all of the panelists, because that is difficult for many people to navigate, to advocate in the moment for yourself. So how do you guys do that?
I will start with that one. So this is my first time ever being on a panel, but I've always just taken the approach of trying to self-advocate when I am actually, can you hear me okay? Can you hear me? I always try to take the approach of self-advocating when I am at the theater. I recognize I was a bit naive, right? I got into acting sort of late in the game. And so I came in with this naivety that this was a space to be open and honest. And it's well, this is what I need to be myself, my full, artistic self on stage, is that I need to express what's happening and I need to be real in this moment so I can bring realness to the stage. And I very quickly saw how unappreciated that was, but it didn't stop me. I mean, I still continue to advocate to this day directly to the people who are in charge, because it shows me who I'm truly working for. And it also shows me how far we have to go in this industry. When you bring something to the head of a theater and they don't know how to mitigate it, or they don't even know where to begin, it says a lot about the people who are putting Black trauma on their stages. And so for me, I had to take a step back in order to say, okay, if I don't know who I'm performing and profiting, is this what I want for my career? Is this the choice that I want to make as an artist? And so I always make a point to bring these things to theater makers in order to see where they lie. I mean, and it's not always appreciated. There's been definitely some retaliatory behavior and response to me speaking up. I noticed that a lot of times other actors of color will shy away, and I think that a lot of that speaks to the power that theaters have. The power that theaters have to be able to shut down an actor who's speaking the truth versus, an actor who has to make a choice of like, this is really messed up, but I don't want to say anything because I need the EMC points, or I need to return to this theater next year in the future. So that's how I advocate for myself. I just always try to be honest in the moment, and it hasn't always turned out right, but never once have I regretted it.
Thank you so much. Did anybody else want to speak about that topic?
I do. I would like to. So self-advocating, I think the same as Santoya said, in the moment, sometimes can hold the show up or hold the rehearsal up, or, this doesn't feel right. I usually will get a little quiet at first, and I'll observe the room to see if anybody else felt what I felt. Did you feel that? See that? Is it just me? If no one else, if everything just kind of continues on normally, I make sure to give myself safe space. If I need to exit, I'll exit. If I need to say, this direction is not working for me, I'm not comfortable doing that, I'll do that. And there have been a few times I've had to say it 3 times before the director actually heard me. That's not okay for me. That's not okay for me. That's not okay for me. And I think the one thing that I really want to say is that the same thing, Santoya, yes, other actors of color, other people of color within that room, within that space with us, they will shy away because that's what we've been taught. That's beyond the theater community. That's worldwide. That's throughout this nation. That's in every corporate office. That's in every school. That's just the way that we have been taught to survive. In that moment of silence, we need to be silent. And somebody, I think it was Toni Morrison, who said that silence is equated to good. And so you want to be good. I want to be the good one. I want them to say that I was the good one. So I don't want to say anything. And so I get into a lot of trouble too, because I speak up, and I really think it's important to do it within the space so that we have accountability. So I definitely feel like self-advocating. First, I need to, look at the lay of the land. Do I have any allies in here? Is it just going to be me against the world right now? Or, do I need to go head to toe? So.
I will say 2 things. The best piece of advice I've gotten was from Sharifa Holder of Oregon Shakespeare Festival. I was beaten down, and I called her and I needed advice on how to deal with predominantly white theater spaces. And she had told me, before you even enter the first rehearsal, you list your demands. You say it. This is what I need. This is what I need to perform. This is what I need in the room. Because she said, once I get in the room and I have not listed what I needed, I lose power in the room. So I could go in with a white male director, and I had felt like I had no say, no power. I was even policed in the room. So she said, once you get in, before you get in the room, say what you need, and take your power back, or hold your power before entering the room. And then secondly, a rule for myself is I don't allow any, especially Black woman, to advocate for herself alone. That is my number one rule. When she experiences devaluation or anti-Blackness, I'm right there. That is the rule. Like, she doesn't do it alone. And too many times I have had to watch Black actresses go at this thing alone. Nobody was saying anything. So it has become I advocate, and I advocate strong. So I suit up. So yeah.
Rodney. And then Kathleen. Okay, please, Kathleen, go ahead.
Please go, please go.
No, oh, Rodney, you had your hand up for a minute. Okay, I was just gonna say, for me, it starts at the audition. You know, it starts when you first walk in the door. It's like if you walk in that room and you know that there may be several Black roles in the show, or there may not be any, but this might be some color conscious casting awareness like that, and you walk in the room and all the white people are white people in it. All the white people are white people. There are all white people in the room. I think there is value in asking who else is involved in this project. Just say, I'm coming into this room and this character that I'm auditioning for may have some trauma involved in this particular role I'm playing. And I'm just kind of interested in who else might be in the room to help that be a safe space. And I think that it really comes to, like, when you walk in, it's like just they're auditioning me. It's hard, especially when you're a younger. I'm old now, but especially when you're a younger actor, it's really hard to feel like that you're empowered to ask. But you're interviewing them for this job too. You're like, I'm awesome. If you want me, this is what I need. And walk in that door thinking, I am awesome, I'm amazing, I'm incredible, you would benefit from having me here. So here's what I need for all of us to be able to do our best work. And so I think it's from the get-go, from knowing it, from reading the casting notice and seeing, there's a white director and a white dramaturg and a white co-director and a white set designer and one little brown me in this show. Maybe that's something that I want to interrogate before I go in there. And so I really do think it starts way earlier than once we're all in the room and we're like, brr, here we are. And that way, once you've started that conversation, then the subject is broached and people can't act like it didn't come up.
Rodney?
That's real, Kathleen. Yes, shit. I was thinking of, I have lots of experience of theater outside of the Bay Area community as well. And I've noticed the fear of speaking up as being similar or equating to losing your job or putting your job in jeopardy. And what kind of mental fear are we supposed to then operate at our highest level as artists that we've been hired or auditioned and cast to do with that kind of like mental grip? You know, you can't, it's like, viscerally, and like as artists, we're visceral. I'm feeling this thing, this tug, but something over here is telling me, don't you mention that. But then that looming on me, how am I supposed to then operate? It's a lot. But to answer this question for me, how I answered it, because I wrote down some notes. In my note, I wrote down, I go back to my roots. How do I advocate for myself? I think I go back to my family. You know, my roots and family in the theater community is a group called Attain here in San Francisco. They're the African American Theater Alliance for Independence. They're comprised of Asif Backo, our theater company, Cultural Odyssey, Lorraine Hansberry Theater Company, Coach Dan's, Afro Solo, and African American Shakespeare. We advocate for each other. When Marcelo, my co-founder, and I first created this company, they were who held us together. They were like, oh, y'all got something, come with us, hold on. We see potential in your strong leadership and your power, and they're not a lot like you, and we don't want you guys to fall down, because so often, think about how our kids, without role models and other people like them, they fall off, who look like us, who are Black and brown. They fall off without the strong examples and mentors. So we've been mentored by this cohort, and now we're like ready. We're like taking the reins with the company, and they're like, yeah, let's go do all the things. So that's how we advocate. I go back to my roots, and last but not least, we persevere, because we can't stop and we won't stop. we're planning, we're writing, we're producing, we're thinking, we're writing our stories. We persevere, we put it into our art, and sometimes it's hard and scary, and sometimes you don't want to go there, but I think it's therapeutic, and it's really, really fulfilling to keep going. Because we have to keep going, because we can't be silenced, because then there's a layer of whatever was silencing us being content. And excuse my language, but fuck that.
I also want to speak to something that you said a little bit earlier, Rodney, because you said that you didn't want to make a joke necessarily because this is a very serious topic. I invite it personally because it's not just a serious topic; it's our lives. So we can do whatever we want, especially in this moment, and in every single moment, as all of you have noted, is that when we, especially as Black people, really just lay down what we want and what we need and just give what we want to give and what we can give in that moment, that is stronger than, it's a very strong thing to do. So I just want to reframe that understanding or reframe that language. But something that I did hear with everyone's comments was that we kind of fall into this aspect of white supremacy inside of theater spaces that focus on our valuation, that focus on, and by valuation, I mean like, are we of value if we blank, blank, blank? If we speak up in this one moment, if we advocate for ourselves, if we simply say, I don't like that that happened, and that causes harm even in that moment. So I guess I want to turn that to, for, of course, these answers might all be the same, they might all be a little different, but for you, gosh, why do you see anti-Blackness still being so pervasive in our theater culture, given the fact that our whole art form is based off of narratives, sharing narratives, and empathetic communication?
Can I start with that one? To me, it's because of the silence, because we did not know. When Stephen Bisher brought his lawsuit against ACT, that he was standing for me. He was standing for the 3 years that I went through there. He was standing for Omoze. He was standing for all of us. And in that moment, there was like so much resistance. Nobody really wanted to come and tell all the truth. We were still trying to get people to tell all the truth. What happened to you? Say what happened to you. But the priority can never be, I want to work on this stage in my Blackness, not in my Blackness. In this Blackness, the priority has to be, how far can we come? How far can we grow? How can we gain victory over the oppression worldwide and in the silencing and the lack of ability to live our full lives with all of the potential that we have. That's my priority. And so I think in this community, what I've noticed is that a lot of people don't want to say things that have happened. They just don't want to say it. They'll tell somebody in secret, but they won't say out in the open. Now, if a theater company harmed me, I don't want my sister to go there and work. I wouldn't want my sister to go there and fall into the same trap that I fell into. And I think that being truthful, regardless of what the overall outcome was, you still, if they apologized, if they made reparations, you still need to say what happened. This happened to me. And I think that way we could stop some of that, the culture, because the culture now, even Black artists are treating other Black artists the way they've been treated by white supremacists, so to me, it's about really, talking about it and being very open about it and not holding it in and not holding secrets.
Santoya, please.
I just want to say, I don't know how far we went into the history of this country prior to jumping on the panel today, because I was on at the start of the call, but I truly think this all starts with the fact that this country has never seen truth and reconciliation for its original sin, which is slavery. Because there has never been an atonement for slavery, everyone in this country, no matter what race you are, still carries the effects and the impacts of that. And it manifests differently in different people. So, you know, as a white person or a person who's not Black, it might be your privilege in whatever way that shows up for you. Me, myself, as a Black person, I've also had to unlearn systemic racism and the ways in which I was indoctrinated with white supremacy growing up in this country. So when you bring that sort of narrative, I mean that's just the state of the country, and then bring us into theater where you have these power structures, mostly you know, headed by people who would consider themselves to be liberal, but they're not looking at the standard of what it really means to be liberal in this country. So right now in the 21st century, there is a slogan that says, "My life matters." It's Black Lives Matter. And that offends someone in another part of the world. So you, liberal person heading up the theater saying Black Lives Matter does not mean that you got it, that you figured it out. You have blind spots, and you need to be aware of those blind spots and how you perpetuate anti-Blackness unconsciously. I think that this is done especially here in the Bay Area because people applaud themselves on the back for doing the bare minimum. I've seen it, and I think that to Cheri's point, you know, our silence is complicit, and to that Toni Morrison quote that she mentioned earlier, it's like, yeah, it is, you know, being a good person is seen as an honorable thing, in the same way that, I hate to take it there, but in the same way, you know, back in the day with slavery, certain behaviors were clearly defined as being a good slave and certain ones were defined as being a bad slave. And I think we just have to understand that where we are now is nowhere near the finish line. We all have a lot of work to do. So don't think because you were on this call that, you know, you're closer than the person who didn't get on this call. We all have to do the work of really unearthing our own indoctrination in this country. And as a whole, we need truth and reconciliation in the same way that South Africa had after apartheid. It's the only way we're going to see real change in any industry in this country.
I want to add to that as well. I was born in the South, so I got to see like racism like coming at me directly. It was so direct. But then I come to the West Coast, and it's almost like there's this weird, did I just see that? What was that? You know, it confused me because I was not accustomed to racism from that lens. And so I'm thinking, I'm a woman, I can trust this white woman who is the leader of such and such, this theater and that theater. Everybody's like, yes, we got women in the theater. So I'm like, oh, okay, I can go to her. And then something comes out of her mouth or she grabs my hair. And I'm like, what? Like something, and it wasn't the N word, but it was like, it was just off. Like there was like this ownership, and I didn't know I was being owned, and that I should be thankful for somebody choosing me, you know? It was something I had never experienced before, or even going to another theater in which, I don't even want to say no names, but I won't. This ain't the space, but feeling like I could go to a director who was BIPOC. And I was like, okay, you get me. We go through the same thing. And then this person's treating me less than because I'm a woman. And he's treating the men like with kid gloves. They get to do anything. And the men are saying, yes, I love this theater. But I'm sitting here like, this is a tale of two cities. Like, we're not on the same page. And I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have I have no one to speak to this. And it's so nuanced. It's not blatant. So it's like, what is happening? And so I'm getting gaslit, or I'm looking like I'm crazy. I go out to, like, I leave the theater and I have to deal with these weird nuances, these microaggressions. And then I come to the theater and it's the same thing and I don't know what to do. And so people, I feel like a lot of theater leaders, they ignore the nuances because it's not, we aren't the ones with the white. It's almost like because they're not wearing the white sheet, or because they're not like 45, they get to be excused. But it's like, I see the parallels and I can point to you, especially with these statements. They're like the NFL statement. We know that statement probably are coming, that statement came from conservatives, but I'm like, you're just as conservative too, from a liberal standpoint. It's the same thing. And it's like, I have to stress that, like, a liberal leader here in the Bay Area is not that far off from a conservative leader. But there's this idea that a liberal leader gets to be put on a pedestal because they don't do that. And I'm like, no, you did this, and that's just as bad. So, yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying that, for speaking that truth. Just sisters and brothers, thank you. I just feel like this, and the Bay Area seems like it gets its street cred just by being the Bay Area. It's like, people are just like, oh, well, I live in the Bay Area, and that's why such and such. Well, I live in the Bay Area, so I'm not like those people in North Carolina. Well, I live in the Bay Area. You know, and I find that particularly in places, forgive me for just calling out, particularly in places like Berkeley, that audiences will come to see a show, they'll come to a post-show conversation, and one of the things that'll come out of their mouth, well, I know this because I live in Berkeley. And we're just like, okay, but you know, there's still, what percentage of you are white, and how many of you go across the street when black people walk down the street to encounter you? So it's just, I think that there's this street cred by virtue of where you live that gets represented. And I think that this anti-Blackness is prevalent in Bay Area theater community because it's prevalent in society and it's systemic. And we cannot separate the theater as much as we like to say we're different and we're special and we're holding up that mirror to society and we're flipping it on its head and we're interrogating it. It's still those white people with money that are buying tickets to the theater. And if we challenge them too hard and they stop coming, then they're like, damn, we done said something and now the white people aren't coming back anymore buying these tickets. And so the step to interrogation of the material only goes so far until it starts affecting somebody's bottom line. And people can say, yeah, I'm a nonprofit theater, but you're making profit and you're getting money from these people. And so I think that the economics has a lot to do with it. And I also think that I'm just gonna say it, white folks love Black culture. Our music and our braids, like remember when Kim Kardashian got the braids and she called them boxer braids? They ain't boxer braids, those are cornrows. They're French braids, that's Black. They love our music. How many white people are out there saying dope and I'm woke and all that? Love our culture, but they don't love Black people. And I feel like that's something that really hurts my heart. It's like you can come and you can co-op and you can take and you want me to be there. And then you say, I do my one Black show every year and you think that's good enough. When somebody calls you on that, you're gonna, well, we're gonna do our one Black show every year and then maybe cast a Black person in one other show. See how progressive we are? And it's like nobody's flinging the doors wide open. They're just like letting us take a little peek and come in a little bit. And I think that it's just, when it's hitting people's bottom line, when it's making white people too uncomfortable, then they're not going to open their door any farther than that. And it's people are proud of themselves about how colorblind they are. I don't want people to be colorblind. I want you to be color conscious. I want you to see me. I've lived my whole life Black. I am Black. See me as Black and make use of that in your piece of theater. But don't, I don't see color. Well, why the hell not? Please do. Please. And it's just, if you speak out, then people are like, oh, you're hostile and you're angry. And like, I don't have a reason to be, 300 or 400 years in America to be angry. Like, I don't have a reason. And then the Black people who are often getting hired into positions of making choices are the Black people that are the most palatable to the white people. Because nobody's going to hire a Black person who says, I'd like to come into your theater and I'd like to set that motherfucker on fire. But if I was in the room, I'd say, that's the person we need in here to hear that point of view. And so I feel very much like that, the one who's going to toe the status quo, that's the nice black person to have in the room because they're our friend and they're looking at how good we're doing. But if I'm like, I got my match here, then I'm not the one who wants to be there because I'm not vetting the black people that should be in the room. The white people are thinking of who they want to play golf with or who they'd enjoy hanging out with or that kind of thing. So those of us who are rabble rousers, rebels, speak the truth, are pushed away because the nicer black people are the ones that they really want to be speaking. So
I love that you said that because I know we get put on pedestals. It's like if you're for only some of us and not all of us, then you're really for none of us, period. And I feel like a lot of people don't understand that. So it's like, cut the pedestals. I don't want to know about your black friend. I don't care. Don't tell me. Just fix the situation, period. So I love that. Thank you, Kathleen.
I need a fan. I need to clutch my pearls. I need a sip of water. I need a lot, y'all. I need a lot. But gosh, I want to move into a slightly different topic, but it's very much connected because something that everyone just talked about was how this idea or act of neoliberalism really hides racism and capitalism and all of the damage that those two systems provide and create. But I want to ask, or just open the door to talk about anti-Blackness inside of the BIPOC community. Because as we mentioned, or as all of you mentioned, adhering to white supremacist standards is also a type of protection for Black people and not Black people. So I guess I just want to ask, do you see anti-Blackness in the BIPOC community with or without non-Black folks? And how does that come out in the theater realm?
It makes it so unbalanced, and it makes it very difficult to create equal footing in the space and to create safe space, because you have this one person that's just completely fine with everything as status quo, just like Kathleen said. Oh, I can work around this. Oh, I can get around that. Oh, that's just fine. Oh, I love a challenge. And then, but it's completely, you're getting bruised. You're being silenced, and you feel completely different from this other person. And the first thing you want to say is, what's wrong with me? Am I being too sensitive? Am I being hard to work with? Should I, stretch a little bit more? That, and the conflict, it doesn't just stay inside of you. That conflict takes up space too, and then you bumping and bruising, and it creates an entire mess. And when there's no unity, when you feel like I have to still convince people that I'm worthy to be here, even people of color, that I'm worthy to be here. You don't see my worth? You don't see my worth? Yeah, I'm sorry. It brings up so many memories. I had an Asian woman tell me how big my butt was and how my butt was taking up too much space. And it was funny to her. And I have to work in this. I have to try and find a place to work and feel and be in that space. So it's just, it's so hurtful. And it's hurtful beyond that room. You walk out the door with that hurt. You walk into the next space with that hurt. Then you want to, try and keep yourself safe away from, you're looking at all Asian people like you're looking at all the, it's so divisive. And it just does not work. Theater has to be a safe space. It has to be.
Santoya?
I think definitely think that we see anti-Blackness in the BIPOC communities in theater. I would say it manifests itself a lot as code switching. And what I mean by that is not the traditional code switching, but if it's a non-Black person of color, they might act differently with you than they act when they're in the room full of these white people in a position of power. I often see, especially if they're more white passing people of color, they try to align themselves more with whiteness when they're in the room with predominantly white people. And they might not be so inclined. I'm not saying this is everyone. I have some really dear people of color in this community who are ride or dies. But I have also seen white passing people of color who align themselves with whiteness. And when it's convenient for them, really make a distinction that they're not Black in whatever way that means. And then when we're alone, it seems as though there's a benefit to say, oh no, I'm just like you. You know, I go through the same things as you. But if your actions and your words are not in alignment, something's going to feel off. And one thing I always say is that, you know, anti-Blackness could not have gone on this long in the theater community if more people stood up for it. So it's important to call it out regardless of what your race is or how you identify. And I'm glad that you asked that question, because I think that a lot of people, as soon as this whole George Floyd thing happened, I felt like a lot of people just felt they could like skirt on over to the Black side and be like, yes, we have been discriminated. And again, it's that unawareness of, you know, how you also are perpetuating white supremacy. Maybe it's through colorism. Maybe it's just through, like I said, trying to align yourself with whiteness when whiteness is the position of power in the equation.
And to extend that question a little bit deeper, how does this, whether it be anti-Blackness or kind of colorism more specifically, how does this play out in casting? And also what gets put on the stage as well? Because you know I had to ask that, I'm sorry, and I'm not sorry.
Yeah, I'm gonna speak on after you get cast. I'm gonna speak on during casting. But I've had so many examples of being like the young Black cat in a show. Cat, I'm saying like fella, young Black brother in the show amongst a lot other elders or people who've had more experience, and then seeing and noticing things that just didn't feel right, where we all had that tug and wanting to speak and kind of being like, hey, no, get over here, shh, 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 shh. And I didn't really understand what that was, but it was like, nah, this is a job. Do your job. And I'm like, wait, but that's not. But I had to dissect it more. They've seen so many other people in their experience speak out and fall off. And they're like, I don't want this to happen to you. But how messed up is that? That now they live in this world where their floor is just be quiet so we can get through it. You know? And it's like, where are we gonna, create a new respect of where the floor is? We're not asking to be like seen as gods or anything. We are gods. But we're not asking you to put us on this huge pedestal above someone else. Where is the level of like, and I'm not trying to get too political. We're like a PC, you're not politically correct. And like, we're not asking for that either, but like, there is a level of respect. Like, why are you in fear of an artistic director touching your hair? That's not a level of respect at all. There's just like, where is the floor that we can all just be on together? Because like Get Out, we're constantly just falling in this damn sunken place. Like we tired of falling. We just want to get to like, okay. Oh, you're here. Can we like again? I say it. That girl said, y'all lucky we looking for equality and not, was it revenge? I think it was, or something else, because man, she right.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to comment on that question before we move on?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't speak on the casting, so if somebody want to talk about casting,
you can
go
speak
in.
You can, it's all for you, baby. But did anyone want to address the question before moving on to another question?
Well, I have to be asked to audition. After I'm a theater goer at first. I love being in the audience. But if I'm made to feel uncomfortable as an audience member, I don't plan to go out and audition for them. And people ask me all the time, why don't you audition more? Why don't you work more? Why don't you audition more? I didn't feel safe as an audience member. I was silenced as an audience member, or I was offended I was pushed, or, the white lady cried, whatever happened. Like, why would I want to go and audition? Why would I want to work on that stage? I was just traumatized trying to watch a show.
That's not just you. That's many people. Let's just get that straight.
I will say one thing on auditioning, and I guess it's not that much in the Bay Area, but I have been in those spaces where you mentioned this, Cheri. You walk in and you're like, oh, okay, so there are two other Black brothers. Okay, they're gonna pick one of us. Awesome. Now that person's my competition. And it's like, what kind of feeling is that? Not nurturing, there's no, and it is a job. This is a business. We understand that. And it's like, but it's also our craft. And I just feel like there is not a nuanced, I don't know, level of respect for Black people, because I don't know. I don't think that people who are not other, or like who are marginalized, I don't know if they feel what we feel when there are only one or two of them in the room. I don't know. I've been blessed to be in cast where there's tons of Black people, so that's awesome. But that's not always the norm for the experience of Black artists. Normally there's one or two of us, and that in itself garnishes a sense of anxiety and a sense of, solitude. You feel alone, So I wonder if there's a whole question about how the theater can, not isolate specific, but unless the story is talking about that. See, that's where we get really nuanced, because some stories talk about that, and those stories are important because we tell stories. That's what we do, and we're not trying to sugarcoat and like change the stories, because his stories are important. But I don't know. I'm just thinking about, you said auditioning and experience, and that came to my mind.
No, thank you so much. I think that the next question that I'm really interested in asking is that all of you have shared kind of how you individually advocate for yourself, try to address these issues, and kind of all this knowledge and experience. Have there been times where it has gone, the conversation has gone well? Because sometimes I prep myself for the worst possible outcome when I try to voice an opinion, or when I try to advocate for myself, like all of you have done. So are there any times where it's like, actually that conversation was productive, or that conversation was nice even? So we can kind of learn what steps could be made maybe tomorrow for someone. Yes, go ahead.
I think that there have been times when that conversation has gone well. I think it's interesting because often it takes 2 or 3 tries. It takes I'm struggling with this a little bit, and they're like, oh, okay, all right, we'll see what we can do. And then the next couple days it happens again, then they're like, maybe we need to have a meeting and sit down and talk about it. And then we'll get the next step. Maybe I'll bring a sister in, and you know what I mean? And then maybe it'll take another step. And then I think what's the hard part after that is, even if the discussion has gone well, how does that discussion get turned into action items and into policy for the theater? Because I think it's now at this point about policy. It's not just about them saying, really sorry I hurt your feelings, ain't nobody gonna touch your hair again. It's going to be, we are going to honor each person's body and not invade their space. That's policy. Do you know what I mean? So I think that the discussion can go well. I think that there's always a wall that you hit when you're at discussion to implementation of what you bring to the theater. And the theater is always struggling with sort of what's in their vested interest to implement, because implementation of some other policy often makes them have to admit some complicity in some bad behavior. And that's really, and theater companies don't want, I mean, none of us want to go there like in our life. I don't want to say I did that wrong, but sometimes you got to admit that it's admitting that you did it wrong if you have to change the policy in the future. But I think that's the kind of investment people need to be willing to make. But that's a hard process. It's a multi-step process, not just the conversation.
Santoya, please.
I keep going back to this point of truth and reconciliation because it is true. It is so important for this discussion. And I can't say that I've ever had a successful conversation with a theater, but I can speak to what I'm looking for when I bring something to a theater. And I think Kathleen touched on something important. It's not, in my opinion, it's not about the theater saying, okay, well, yes, it is them admitting wrongdoing. But within that, if you are apologizing for something, but yet your actions are not aligned with what you are apologizing for, something is off. And I think that's in any relationship we have, we're always looking for, if someone holds themselves accountable, then their actions after that should be in alignment with what they've held themselves accountable for. Otherwise, it was an empty conversation. And so I think a lot of times, especially right now, I feel like what we're seeing are theater companies kind of approaching situations in a way that they can still maintain their reputation. And I think that it's going to take a true level of honesty that I don't think this industry has ever seen. Almost in the same way, you know, you look at what happened with the Me Too movement, right? We are now at the point where if someone says they've been harassed sexually, honestly, I mean, it's taken very, very seriously. And we're still not at that point yet when it comes to anti-Blackness. There's still an element of people being like, oh, I don't really see it like that. And we see that from our unions and we see that from theaters. So it's extremely important if someone is trying to approach these conversations and they're truly trying to look at the ways that their theater companies can change, they have to approach it in complete honesty, humbleness, and they have to make sure that their actions after that conversation are transparent to the people they have impacted, the people that they've offended, and then their actions after that are in alignment with what they say they're going to do moving forward, and with their apology if they're offering one as well.